Adanna, stop embarrassing yourself. I know what I'm doing. You cannot say such things in the open. What if the prince hears you?
Let him hear.
You are dreaming too loudly.
I am not dreaming. I am preparing for my destiny.
What destiny?
The throne.
In the village of Umuoka, everyone believed Adanna would one day become a queen. She was the most beautiful girl in the village, the daughter of a wealthy family, and she had only one dream: to marry the prince. But while she waited proudly for the prince to notice her, a poor farmer kept chasing her with a heart full of love. She rejected him, again and again. What Adanna didn't know was that the prince had already fallen in love, not with her, but with a quiet village girl who carried firewood on her head. And by the time the truth finally reached Adanna, the entire village would be watching. Under the giant udala tree at the edge of the village square, the oldest woman in Umuoka village slowly shook her head. Mama Nwakaego. She had lived long enough to see kings rise and kingdoms fall, long enough to watch love build homes and destroy them. She spat the cola nut juice softly into the red earth. Her voice was low, almost like a warning carried by the wind. Love is about to bring trouble to this village. One of the young girls turned. "Grandmother, how can love bring trouble?" Mama Nwakaego's wrinkled eyes rested on Adanna for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "My child, when pride falls in love with a crown..." She paused. "Someone will cry." The laughter around the square faded, because in Umuoka village, someone was already crying. Umuoka was a proud Igbo village surrounded by endless green farmland, tall palm trees, and red earth paths that curved like snakes across the land. Every morning before sunrise, the village awoke with life. Roosters crowed, mortars pounded yam, smoke rose from cooking fires. Women wrapped colorful George fabrics tightly around their waists and balanced heavy baskets on their heads. Men walked toward the farms carrying hoes across their shoulders. Children ran barefoot through the compounds chasing chickens and shouting with laughter. But above all these ordinary lives stood one place that was anything but ordinary: the king's palace. A wide compound surrounded by tall clay walls and carved wooden pillars that told stories of warriors, spirits, and ancestors who once ruled the land. Inside that palace lived the man every young woman in Umuoka secretly dreamed about: Prince Obinna, the only son of Igwe Chidubem, the future king, and a man whose presence alone could make hearts forget how to beat properly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the calm authority of someone born into power. When Prince Obinna walked through the village, elders greeted him with respect. Women lowered their eyes. But the young girls? They stole glances. And one girl in particular did more than glance. She dreamed. Her name was Adanna, the daughter of the wealthiest palm oil trader in Umuoka. People said her father's oil barrels reached markets as far as Onitsha. Money flowed through their compound like water, and Adanna carried herself like someone who knew it. She was beautiful in the way fire is beautiful: bright, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Her skin glowed like polished bronze beneath the sun. Her waist beads jingled softly whenever she walked, and she walked with the confidence of someone who believed the world had already chosen her for greatness. One afternoon, she sat outside her father's compound weaving her long hair carefully into neat braids. Ngozi leaned closer. You know the prince watched you yesterday. Adanna stopped braiding. Of course you did. Ngozi raised an eyebrow. You sound very sure. Adanna smiled slowly. I am the most beautiful girl in this village. She lifted her chin. If the prince has eyes, he will see me. Ngozi giggled. But he didn't speak to you. Adanna waved her hand dismissively. He will. Then she said something that would later echo across the entire village. He just does not know yet that I am the woman he will marry. But not far from where Adanna sat, someone else was watching her. A young man named Chibuzo. Chibuzo was everything the village admired, but nothing the village celebrated. He was not rich. He had no powerful family name. He had no connection to the palace. Yet everyone respected him, because Chibuzo possessed something rarer than wealth: character. Every morning before the rooster crowed, Chibuzo was already in his late father's farmland, digging into the stubborn red soil. Sweat soaked his shirt, dust covered his feet, but his face always carried quiet determination, because Chibuzo believed one thing deeply: a man who works hard will never beg. But even the strongest men have weaknesses, and Chibuzo's weakness had a name: Adanna. He had loved her since childhood, back when they chased butterflies together, back when she laughed freely without pride in her voice. But as they grew older, Adanna stopped seeing him. To her, he had become invisible. One evening, as the sun melted into the river, Chibuzo finally gathered the courage he had been storing in his heart for years. He approached her by the village stream. Adanna was washing vegetables. The water reflected the fading orange sky. Adanna, he said softly. She turned. Oh, Chibuzo. Her voice was polite, but distant. I brought you something, he said nervously. He handed her a small basket. Inside were fresh mangoes from his farm, the sweetest ones, the ones he had saved for days. Adanna stared at them, then at him. You came all the way here to give me mangoes? Yes. For a moment, Chibuzo thought he saw kindness in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. She sighed. Chibuzo, she said, you are a good man. His heart lifted, but her next words crushed it. But I am not a kind of woman who marries farmers. Her voice was calm, almost casual. My destiny, she continued confidently, is bigger than that. She handed the basket back to him. I will be a queen one day. Then she walked away, leaving Chibuzo standing by the stream, holding the mangoes, watching the water carry his silence away. But fate was already laughing, because while Adanna dreamed of the prince had just met someone else. Her name was Amarachi, the daughter of a poor but respected farmer. If Adanna's beauty was fire, Amarachi's beauty was moonlight. Soft, quiet, peaceful. She did not dress to impress anyone. She tied simple wrappers, worked beside her parents, and spoke with gentle kindness to everyone. That morning she was harvesting cassava in her family farm. Her younger brother was teasing her about something silly. Her laughter cleared across the fields like music. Prince Obinna had come to inspect palace farmland nearby, but when he heard the laughter, he stopped walking. He looked across the field and saw her, bent slightly as she lifted cassava from the soil, sunlight touching her face. He forgot why he came. Who is that girl? He asked his guard. The guard followed his gaze. Oh, that is Amarachi, he shrugged. Farmer Okeke's daughter. The prince continued watching. A farmer's daughter. But something about her simplicity pulled at his heart. Something quiet, something honest, something real. And that was the moment destiny quietly planted a seed. Meanwhile, back in the village, Chibuzo had made a decision. If hard work could change a man's future, then he would work harder than anyone alive. The next morning he appeared at Adanna's family farm before sunrise. Her father looked surprised. "Chibuzo, why are you here so early?" "I came to help," Chibuzo replied respectfully. The old man smiled. "Ah," he laughed. "A young man who works without being asked is worth 10 who only talk." But Adanna frowned. Who invited him? Her father chuckled. Hard work is always invited. And that day, Chibuzo worked harder than anyone. Digging, clearing weeds, planting seedlings. The sun burned overhead, but he never stopped. Even Adanna's father shook his head later in admiration. This boy will become a great man. But Adanna's mother scoffed. What use is greatness without wealth? She lowered her voice. My daughter will marry the prince. And somewhere far away, destiny listened, because in Umuoka village, 3 hearts had already begun moving towards the same crown. One heart driven by pride, one heart driven by love, and one heart that did not yet know it was about to change everything. And when those 3 paths finally collided, Umuoka village would never be the same again, because sometimes the person chasing a crown is running away from the heart that truly loves them. The stage is set. Love, ambition, and destiny are colliding, and the game has just begun. Who will win the heart of the prince, and who will be left broken? Stay with us, because in the next chapter, the crown will come with consequences. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and comment below. Join us as the drama unfolds and find out what happens when fate forces hearts to choose and lose. This is just the beginning.